My entire family disowned me after I forced my brother to sell our family business that our grandfather built from nothing in 1967. They're calling me vindictive, cruel, and saying I destroyed our father's legacy out of pure spite. But honestly, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Before you judge me, let me ask you this. If someone spent 15 years systematically pushing you out of something that was rightfully yours, wouldn't you fight back? If you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Also, I'm really curious. What city are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below. Now let me explain how we got here. Because trust me, this goes way deeper than anyone in my family wants to admit. I'm Marcus, 38M, and this is about my brother Daniel, 42M. Our dad died 3 years ago from a sudden heart attack at 67, leaving behind Thompson & Sons Construction, a mid-sized commercial construction company in Ohio that did about $4.5 million in revenue annually. Our grandfather started it in a garage in 1967. Our dad took over in 1989. And the plan was always that Daniel and I would run it together. That's literally what "& Sons" meant. Both of us. I joined the company right out of college in 2009. Started at the absolute bottom, hauling materials, cleaning job sites, learning every single aspect of the business. Daniel had joined in 2005 after getting his MBA, and Dad made him operations manager pretty quickly. I didn't mind. Daniel was older, more experienced, seemed like the natural choice for leadership. I figured we'd work our way to being equals eventually. That never happened. Here's what you need to understand about Daniel. He's one of those people who's incredibly charming to outsiders, but completely different behind closed doors. Clients loved him. Dad loved him. Everyone thought he was this brilliant, charismatic leader. And maybe he was. But he was also calculating as hell. The problem started around 2014. I'd worked my way up to project manager by then, was handling some of our bigger accounts, bringing in solid revenue. I thought things were going well. Then I started noticing that Daniel was making major decisions without consulting me. He'd tell Dad about new contracts, strategic plans, equipment purchases, all conversations I wasn't part of. When I'd bring it up, Daniel would act like I was being paranoid. "Marcus, you're a project manager. I handle the business side. That's how it works," he'd say, flashing that smooth smile that made everyone think he was reasonable. And I was just jealous. But it wasn't just about business decisions. He was poisoning Dad against me. Subtly at first. Dad would make comments like, "Daniel says you've been having some issues with the Harrison project timeline." I'd have to defend myself for problems that didn't exist. Or Dad would mention, "Daniel's really been stepping up with the strategic planning," in a way that implied I wasn't stepping up at all. The thing is, I was stepping up. I was busting my ass. In 2016, I brought in the Riverside Mall renovation, a $1.2 million contract, the biggest single project we'd landed in 5 years. I managed it perfectly. Came in under budget, ahead of schedule. Client was thrilled. You know what Daniel did? Took credit for it in front of Dad. Said he'd really had to guide me through the complexities of commercial renovation. I confronted him privately. We were in his office. He'd taken the bigger office by then, even though we were supposedly equals. "Why did you tell Dad you guided me through Riverside? That was completely my project." He leaned back in his chair, totally calm. "Marcus, you're too sensitive. I was just explaining how we work as a team. Dad knows you did the groundwork, but someone has to maintain the client relationships at the executive level. I maintained the client relationship. I was there for every meeting." "Right, but I closed the deal. I negotiated the final terms. Come on, don't make this weird." That was Daniel's specialty, making me feel like I was the one being weird or difficult when he was gaslighting the hell out of me. It got worse after Mom died in 2017. Breast cancer, absolutely devastating. Dad was wrecked, wasn't himself for over a year. Daniel used that time to completely consolidate power. He convinced Dad to make him president while Dad was still CEO. His reasoning? Dad, you need to focus on grieving and your health. Let me handle the day-to-day stress. Marcus is great at project management. Let's keep him focused there where he excels. Where he excels. Like I was some middle manager who'd hit his ceiling. I pushed back, had a huge fight with Dad about it. This isn't what you and Grandpa planned. It's supposed to be both of us running this company. Dad looked exhausted. Marcus, your brother is just trying to help. He's got the business degree, the strategic mindset. You're excellent at operations. Why isn't that enough? Because it's not what you promised. You always said we'd be partners. Life doesn't always go according to plan. Your mother just died. Can you please not make this harder? And just like that, I was the asshole for wanting what I'd been promised. Daniel had successfully reframed ambition as greed and self-advocacy as selfishness. For the next few years, I tried to make it work. Kept my head down, did excellent work, hoped Dad would see what was happening. But Daniel just kept tightening his grip. He hired his college roommate as CFO, a guy named Brett who was loyal only to Daniel. He restructured departments to report directly to him. He slowly pushed out the old-timers who remembered when Dad promised the company to both of us. By 2021, I was basically a very well-paid employee in my own family's company. I had zero say in strategy, zero input on major decisions. Daniel would occasionally throw me a bone. Marcus, I'd love your perspective on this equipment purchase, but it was performative. He'd already made the decision. Then Dad got sick, heart problems, stress-related. Doctor said he needed to reduce workload. This was early 2022. Dad called us both into his office, the office Grandpa had worked in, with the original 1967 business license framed on the wall. Boys, I need to start thinking about succession planning. I'm not getting younger, and my heart can't take this stress anymore. Daniel jumped right in. Dad, I think we should consider a clear structure. I've been serving as president for 5 years. The transition would be seamless if I step into CEO while you transition to chairman. Marcus continues as VP of Operations. Clean, simple, maintain stability for our employees and clients. VP of Operations. Not even co-CEO or president of something. A vice president title in the company my grandfather built for his sons and grandsons. What about equal partnership, I said, my heart pounding. What about the plan that's been in place for literally my entire life? Dad looked uncomfortable. Marcus, Daniel has more experience at the executive level because you gave it to him. You gave him every opportunity to build that experience while keeping me in project management. Daniel held up his hands. Marcus, I understand you're emotional. Don't tell me I'm emotional. This is my birthright too. Birthright? Daniel laughed. Jesus, Marcus, this isn't a monarchy. It's a business. Dad's trying to do what's best for the company, not play favorites. He's been playing favorites for 15 years. Dad cut in, sharp. Enough. Marcus, your brother has earned his position. This discussion is over. That was March 2022. Dad made Daniel CEO 3 weeks later. My title stayed the same. My salary got a minor bump, probably to shut me up. I considered quitting, but where would I go? This was supposed to be mine. This was supposed to be ours. Then Dad died. September 2022. Another heart attack, this one massive. He was at the office, working late on a Thursday night. Daniel found him the next morning. The funeral was horrible. Our whole industry came out. Dad was respected, well known. Daniel gave this beautiful eulogy about Dad's legacy and vision. He talked about continuing our father's dream and honoring the Thompson name. He cried. Everyone cried. I cried too, but for different reasons. I'd lost my father, and I'd lost any chance of him ever making this right. The will reading was 2 weeks later. Dad's attorney, Robert Chen, had been handling our family's legal stuff for 20 years. He gathered me, Daniel, and our younger sister Emma, 35F, she's a teacher, never involved in the business, in his office. Here's what Dad left. The house and personal assets were split 3 ways between Daniel, Emma, and me. Fair enough, about $400K each after everything was sold and divided. The business was different. To my sons Daniel and Marcus, I leave Thompson & Sons Construction with the following structure. Daniel receives 60% ownership. Marcus receives 40% ownership. It is my hope that they will continue to run the company together, honoring the legacy their grandfather began. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. 60-40. After everything, after all the promises, after a lifetime of being told this was equally mine. 60-40. Daniel looked appropriately solemn. Dad wanted to reflect the leadership structure and contribution levels. I think it's fair, Marcus. Fair? How is this fair? Robert cleared his throat. There's more. The partnership agreement stipulates that Daniel, as majority owner, serves as CEO with final decision-making authority on all business matters. However, any decision to sell the company or take on debt exceeding $1 million requires unanimous consent from all partners. So, I'm a minority partner with veto power only on massive decisions, I said flatly. That's one way to look at it, Daniel said. Or you could see it as Dad protecting both our interests. I can't sell the company without you. You can't make major financial moves without me. We're locked in together, just like he wanted. Emma touched my arm. Marcus, maybe just take some time to process. I've had 15 years to process, Em. This is bullshit. Dad just died, Daniel said quietly. Can we not do this right now? I left. Didn't talk to Daniel for 3 weeks. But here's the thing about owning 40% of a company. You can't just walk away. My ownership stake was worth roughly $1.8 million on paper. That's not nothing. That's my entire net worth basically tied up in this business. I came back to work. What choice did I have? But something had broken in me. The grief, the anger, the years of being sidelined. It all crystallized into one burning thought. Daniel had stolen my birthright with Dad's help, and I was going to make him pay for it. I started documenting everything. Every shady decision, every time Daniel bypassed proper procedures, every instance of him prioritizing his interests over the company's. I knew the business inside and out, better than Daniel in many ways, because I'd actually worked every job. He jumped straight to management. 3 months after Dad died, I found it. The thing that would change everything. Daniel had been skimming. Not massively, not enough to cripple the company, but enough. He'd set up a consulting agreement with a shell company that his wife's brother owned. We were paying $8,500 a month for strategic business consulting that consisted of absolutely nothing. I pulled 3 years of records, over $300,000 paid out to this fake consultant. I had him. I called an emergency meeting with our business attorney and accountant. Presented everything. This is fraud. This is embezzlement. I want to know my options. Our attorney, Patricia Wells, looked grim as she reviewed the documents. Marcus, this is serious. If you pursue this criminally, Daniel could face jail time. The company would be destroyed by the scandal. Your dad's reputation would show that he was fooled by his favorite son. What are my civil options? She laid it out. I could sue Daniel personally for the stolen funds. I could force a sale of the company and split the proceeds according to our ownership percentages. I could demand Daniel buy out my shares at fair market value, or Daniel could buy me out and we'd never have to see each other again. Here's the thing, Patricia said carefully. If you force a sale, the company will likely sell for less than it's worth. Distressed sale, family drama, potential fraud allegations. You'll both lose money, a lot of money. How much would I lose? She calculated quickly. Best case scenario in a forced sale. The company might fetch $3.5 million instead of the $4.5 million it's worth. Your 40% would be $1.4 million instead of $1.8 million. You'd be walking away from $400K. And Daniel's share? He'd lose about $600K. I smiled for the first time in months. So he'd lose more than me. Marcus, she said slowly, this is vindictive. You'd be cutting off your nose to spite your face. No, I'd be making him pay for 15 years of lies. Schedule the meeting. I confronted Daniel in his office the next day. Walked in, closed the door, and threw the file on his desk. What's this? He asked, barely looking up from his computer. Evidence that you've been embezzling from our family company. $300,000 over 3 years, paid to your brother-in-law's shell company for services that were never rendered. He went pale, opened the file, looked through it with shaking hands. Marcus, I can explain. You have two options. Option 1, I go public with this, file criminal charges, and destroy you. You'll probably go to jail, you'll definitely lose your reputation, and the company will collapse in the scandal. Option 2, you agree to sell the company immediately. We put it on the market, take whatever we can get, and split the proceeds according to our ownership. Then we never have to see each other again. You can't be serious. This is Dad's legacy, Grandpa's legacy. You should have thought about that before you stole from it. I was going to pay it back. It was temporary. I had some personal financial issues. I don't care. You stole from me. You've been stealing from me my whole life. Opportunities, credit, recognition, my rightful place in this company. This is just the first time I can prove it. Daniel stood up, his face red. You spiteful piece of shit. You're willing to destroy everything Dad and Grandpa built just to hurt me? I'm willing to destroy it to make sure you don't get to keep it. There's a difference. You'll lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. Worth every penny to watch you lose more. He stared at me, really looked at me for maybe the first time in years. You've always been jealous. Dad saw it. I saw it. You couldn't handle that I was better at this than you. You were never better. You were just more ruthless. And now I'm being ruthless back. I walked out, filed the paperwork the next day to force a sale of the business under the partnership agreement. Since I wasn't consenting to continued operations, and since Daniel couldn't buy me out without taking on debt that I'd have to approve, we were deadlocked. Under Ohio partnership law, that meant mandatory sale and dissolution. Daniel tried everything, called Emma, who called me crying. Marcus, please think about Dad's memory. Think about Grandpa. You're destroying the family over money. This isn't about money, Em. Then what is it about? It's about the fact that I worked my whole life for something I was promised, and Daniel took it while Dad watched. Now Daniel gets to feel what it's like to lose something that was supposed to be his. She called me a monster and hung up. Daniel's wife, Sarah, 40F, they have 3 kids, called me. Marcus, please, we have children. Daniel made a mistake, but you're destroying our family's financial future over your ego. He destroyed my future first. I'm just returning the favor. The sale was finalized last month. A private equity firm bought Thompson & Sons Construction for $3.2 million. Even less than Patricia predicted because word got out about the family drama and fraud concerns. My 40% came to $1.28 million after legal fees and taxes. I walked away with $520K less than my stake was worth before I started this. Daniel got $1.92 million. He lost almost $800K from what he would have had. The new owners kept about half the staff and restructured everything. The Thompson name is gone. 60 years of family legacy erased. Some of the longtime employees won't talk to me. Guys who worked for Dad and Grandpa, who watched me grow up. Daniel sent me one final message. I hope it was worth it. You got your revenge. You made sure neither of us got to honor Dad's legacy. You made sure Grandpa's name is forgotten. You burned it all down because you couldn't handle being number 2. I hope you can live with what you've done. I blocked his number. Emma won't speak to me. Our extended family has mostly sided with Daniel. He's always been more charismatic, better at playing the victim. I've been uninvited from Christmas, from family events. My aunt told me I'm not welcome until I make this right, whatever that means. Some of my old coworkers have reached out privately. A few said they understood why I did it, that they'd seen how Daniel treated me over the years. Most just seemed sad about the whole thing. I took my $1.28 million and invested most of it. Started doing consulting work for other construction companies. I'm making decent money, probably better than I would have, as the permanent number 2 at Thompson & Sons. But I'm alone. I destroyed my family relationships over this. I burned down my grandfather's legacy. I cost myself $500,000 and Daniel almost $1 million. I put good people out of work during a difficult economy. And here's the thing I can't admit to anyone in my real life. I don't regret it. Not even a little bit. When I think about Daniel having to explain to his kids why they had to move to a smaller house, why their college funds took a hit, why Daddy doesn't own the company anymore, I feel satisfied. When I imagine him lying awake at night, thinking about how he lost everything because he got greedy and got caught, it makes me smile. Is that evil? Probably. But 15 years of being gaslighted, sidelined, and stolen from turned me into someone who values justice over forgiveness. Or maybe it just turned me into someone as ruthless as my brother, willing to destroy everything rather than let the other person win. My therapist, yeah, I'm in therapy now, says I'm processing decades of grief and invalidation. That I felt powerless for so long that I overcorrected by seizing the most destructive form of power available to me. She might be right. But I can't shake the image of Dad's face when I told him I wanted equal partnership. And he looked at me like I was being unreasonable. Like I was asking for something I hadn't earned. After I'd given 15 years of my life to that company. After I'd been promised since childhood that it would be mine too. Daniel got what he deserved. The fact that the company and Grandpa's legacy had to die for that to happen? Collateral damage. So that's where I am, financially stable but completely estranged from my family. Vindicated but vilified. At peace with my decision, but aware that most people think I'm a vindictive asshole who destroyed a family legacy over a bruised ego. Maybe they're right. Maybe I am the asshole. But I'm an asshole who finally got justice, and I'll take that over being a doormat who gets walked on for another 15 years. I thought the worst was over after the sale finalized. I really did. I figured Daniel and I would go our separate ways, I'd rebuild my life, and eventually the family drama would die down. Maybe in a few years we'd be able to be in the same room at weddings or funerals without it being a thing. I was so fucking naive. The real war started about 2 weeks after the sale closed. I was having coffee at this place near my apartment. I'd moved to a nicer place in downtown Columbus. Figured if I was going to be the family pariah, I might as well enjoy my money. When my phone started blowing up. First, it was Emma. "Marcus, what the hell did you do? Daniel's attorney just sent me a letter saying I might be called as a witness in a lawsuit." "What lawsuit? What are you talking about?" "He's suing you for fraud or breach of fiduciary duty or something. He says you fabricated evidence and coerced him into selling." I nearly dropped my coffee. "He's doing what?" Turns out, Daniel had hired a major litigation firm out of Cleveland, Rothstein and Associates, the kind of place that handles multi-million-dollar cases. They filed a lawsuit claiming that I had fraudulently manufactured evidence of embezzlement, that the consulting agreement was legitimate. They produced a fake paper trail to support this, and that I had coerced Daniel into agreeing to the sale under duress. They were seeking damages of $2.3 million. Basically everything I'd gotten from the sale plus punitive damages. My attorney Patricia called me an hour later. "Marcus, we need to talk. Now." We met at her office. She looked stressed, which was new. Patricia was usually unflappable. "This is bad. Daniel's claiming you engaged in fraudulent inducement and breach of fiduciary duty as a partner. He's got 3 attorneys working this case. They're going scorched earth. But the embezzlement was real. We have the bank records, the fake consulting agreement, everything. They're claiming it was a legitimate business expense that you mischaracterized. They've produced contracts, invoices, even testimonials from the consultant about work he supposedly performed. It's all fabricated, but it looks legitimate enough to create reasonable doubt. So, what do we do?" She leaned back in her chair. "We fight. But Marcus, this is going to be expensive. We're talking $150K minimum in legal fees, possibly more if it goes to trial. And there's a real chance you could lose. If a jury believes Daniel's version, that you're a jealous brother who fabricated evidence to destroy the family business, they could award him everything he's asking for plus more." I felt sick. I'd be bankrupt. Worse than bankrupt, you'd owe money you don't have. He knows that. That's why he's doing this. He can't win the business back, so he's trying to destroy me financially. Probably. The question is, how far are you willing to go to fight him? I thought about backing down, offering a settlement, maybe splitting the difference. But then I imagined Daniel's smug face, imagined him telling everyone how I'd folded, how I'd admitted I was wrong. All the way. We fight this all the way. Patricia nodded slowly. "Okay. But Marcus, you need to understand something. Even if we win, you've already lost. The legal fees alone will cost you a significant portion of what you gained from the sale. You'll have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to prove you were right about your brother's stealing. Was it worth it? Ask me when this is over." The lawsuit consumed the next 8 months of my life. Discovery was a nightmare. They subpoenaed everything. Every email I'd ever sent from the company account, every text message with Daniel, every conversation with employees. They were looking for anything that could paint me as the vindictive villain. And they found stuff. Of course they found stuff. Like the time I'd texted my buddy Jake after a particularly frustrating meeting. "I swear to God, I'm going to find a way to take Daniel down. I don't care what it takes." Or the email where I'd complained to a former coworker, "Daniel has stolen everything from me. One day he's going to pay for it." In context, those were just venting from a frustrated guy who'd been mistreated for years. But Daniel's attorneys made them sound like I'd been plotting to destroy the company all along. They claimed I'd been waiting for any excuse to force a sale. And when I found the consulting agreement, I deliberately mischaracterized it to create my opportunity. The worst part? Some people believed it. I started getting calls from extended family. My Uncle Richard, Dad's brother, called me one night. "Marcus, I need you to be straight with me. Did you make up this embezzlement thing? Because Daniel showed me the consultant's work product, and it looks pretty legitimate." "Uncle Rich, it's all fake. Daniel created those documents after I confronted him." "That's not what he says. He says you've been mentally unstable since your dad died, that you've been obsessed with bringing him down." "That's bullshit. He stole from the company. Your father trusted Daniel to run that business. If Daniel says the consulting was legitimate, I'm inclined to believe him. You, on the other hand, just destroyed a 60-year legacy because you couldn't handle not being in charge." He hung up before I could respond. That happened over and over. Daniel was working everyone, playing the victim perfectly. He'd tell people, "I tried so hard to make it work with Marcus. I gave him every opportunity. But he couldn't accept that Dad chose me to lead. This lawsuit, I don't want to do this, but I have to defend myself against his lies." My cousin Jennifer, who'd always been close to me growing up, sent me a long message about how disappointed she was, how I'd chosen money over family, how Grandpa would be ashamed of me. She'd obviously been talking to Daniel. Even some of my old co-workers turned on me. Brett, Daniel's CFO friend who I'd never liked, gave a deposition that was basically a character assassination. He claimed I'd been difficult to work with, that I'd resented Daniel's success, that I'd made numerous accounting errors that Daniel had to cover for. All lies, but stated under oath in a legal proceeding. The only person who really stood by me was my childhood friend Marcus. Yeah, we have the same name. His family is black, mine is white, so growing up as the two Marcuses was our thing. He'd known me since we were 8. When I told him everything, he just nodded. "Man, I remember when you got home from work every day for the past 10 years. You were miserable. That shit was eating you alive. Anyone saying you made this up for money doesn't know you. Tell that to my family. Your family doesn't want to believe that Daniel's a thief. It's easier to believe you're crazy. People always choose the easier story." He was right, but it didn't make it hurt less. About 4 months into the lawsuit, things got even worse. Daniel filed an emergency motion claiming I was harassing him. Apparently, I'd driven past his house twice, which he characterized as stalking and intimidation. Never mind that his house was on the route between my apartment and my gym. Never mind that I hadn't stopped, hadn't tried to contact him, had literally just driven on a public street. The judge issued a temporary restraining order. I had to stay 500 feet away from Daniel, his home, his new workplace, and anywhere his children might be. Violating it would mean jail time. I was officially the bad guy. The dangerous, unhinged brother who was so consumed by jealousy that he might be a physical threat. Emma called me after that. "Marcus, you need to stop. This is insane. You're scaring Daniel's kids. They asked their mom why Uncle Marcus wants to hurt Daddy." "I don't want to hurt anyone. I drove past his house twice because that's where the road goes." "Then why did you drive that route? You know where he lives. You could have gone a different way." "So now I have to rearrange my entire life to avoid any street Daniel might be on?" "You rearranged your entire life to destroy his. What did you think would happen? That you'd force him to sell the company and then you'd both just go on being family?" I thought maybe, eventually, people would see that I was right. That he stole from us. That Dad was wrong to cut me out. She was quiet for a long moment. "Marcus, even if you were right about the consulting thing, even if Daniel did steal that money. Was it worth this? You cost yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. You destroyed Grandpa's legacy. You tore our family apart. For what? To prove a point. To get justice. This isn't justice. This is mutual destruction. You're both losing everything to hurt each other. She wasn't wrong. The lawsuit was costing me a fortune. I'd already paid Patricia $90K, and we hadn't even gone to trial yet. My savings were draining. I'd had to sell the nice downtown apartment and move somewhere cheaper. I was doing consulting work, but my reputation in the industry was trashed. Nobody wants to hire the guy who destroyed his family business in a vindictive lawsuit. But I couldn't back down. If I settled or dropped the defense now, Daniel would have won. He'd have proven that you could steal, lie, and manipulate your way to success, and if anyone called you out, you just destroy them with lawsuits until they gave up. Then something changed. About 6 months into the lawsuit, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I'd been getting some nasty calls from people who'd heard Daniel's side of the story. But something made me pick up. "Is this Marcus Thompson?" A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Jennifer Bradshaw. I was the office manager at Thompson & Sons from 2018 to 2021. I heard about the lawsuit and I think you should know something." My heart started pounding. "What?" "Daniel was skimming more than you found. The consulting agreement was just one piece. He had at least 3 other schemes running. I kept quiet because I needed the job, and Daniel made it clear that if I said anything, he'd make sure I never worked in this industry again. But after the company sold and I got laid off anyway, I realized I don't owe him my silence anymore." "Do you have proof?" "I have copies of everything. Invoices from fake vendors, kickback agreements with suppliers, falsified expense reports. I'd estimate he stole close to $600K over the time I was there, and probably more before that." I could barely breathe. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" "Because I watched you work your ass off for that company. I watched Daniel take credit for your work over and over. And I watched your dad believe every lie Daniel told about you. It wasn't right. I'm willing to testify, but I need protection, a whistleblower attorney, maybe immunity if criminal charges get filed. Can you help with that?" "Yes. Absolutely yes. Can we meet?" We met 2 days later at a coffee shop in Dayton, far from anyone who might recognize us. Jennifer was in her 50s, the kind of person who'd been doing office management forever and knew where all the bodies were buried. She brought a USB drive. "Everything's on here." Daniel was careful, but not careful enough. He'd have me process the payments, then tell me to code them to different expense categories to hide them. He thought I was loyal because he paid me well. But I was documenting everything, just in case I ever needed insurance. I looked through the files on her laptop. It was damning. Payments to 3 different consulting firms that didn't exist. Inflated invoices from real suppliers with kickback agreements. Expense reports for business trips that never happened. Even some money that appeared to be going to offshore accounts. Holy shit. This is fraud on a massive scale. I know, and here's the thing. Your dad never knew. Daniel was hiding this from everyone. He had complete control over the finances by the time I got there. I think he was skimming the whole time he was president. Maybe even before. Why didn't you go to my dad? She looked sad. Because your dad thought Daniel walked on water. Every time I tried to raise questions about expenses, Daniel would tell your dad I was confused or mistaken, and your dad would believe him. After a while, I gave up trying. I called Patricia immediately. She reviewed the evidence, and her eyes got wide. Marcus, this changes everything. This isn't just civil fraud anymore. This is criminal. Wire fraud, tax evasion, potentially money laundering. Daniel could go to prison. So what do? We give this to the FBI. Let them investigate. Then we use it in the civil case to prove your original allegations were not only true, but understated. Daniel's lawsuit against you becomes completely baseless. He'll be destroyed. He destroyed himself. You're just bringing the truth to light. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt tired, because I knew what this meant. It meant Daniel would probably go to prison. It meant his wife and kids would lose everything. It meant the family would fracture even further, because now there'd be no debate about who was right. I was right. And Daniel was not just wrong, but criminal. I spent 3 days deciding what to do with Jennifer's evidence. 3 days imagining Daniel in prison, his kids visiting him on weekends, Sarah having to sell their house and move in with her parents. 3 days thinking about how this would affect Emma, Uncle Richard, everyone who'd taken Daniel's side. And then I imagined Daniel 15 years ago, smiling at me while taking credit for my work. I imagined him convincing Dad I was just jealous. I imagined him at the will reading, acting like 60-40 was generous. I gave the evidence to the FBI. The federal investigation started quietly. Agents interviewed Jennifer, subpoenaed bank records, started tracing the money. Daniel didn't know at first. They were building the case carefully. But about 6 weeks later, FBI agents showed up at his house at 6 a.m. to execute a search warrant. They seized his computers, his phones, boxes of financial documents. Did the same thing at his office. Daniel called me that night. First time I'd heard his voice in months. You did this. I gave them evidence of crimes you committed. You destroyed me. You couldn't just take the business, you had to destroy my entire life. You destroyed my life first, for 15 years. I gave you a career, a great salary, a place in the company. You gave me crumbs from something that was half mine by birthright. Fuck your birthright. You weren't good enough to run that company and you know it. There it was. The truth he'd never said out loud before. Maybe I wasn't, but I deserved the chance to try. Dad promised me the chance and you stole it. So, yeah, I destroyed you. Just like you destroyed me. He hung up. That was the last time we spoke. The FBI investigation took months. During that time, Daniel's civil lawsuit against me quietly went away. Kind of hard to claim someone fraudulently accused you of embezzlement when the FBI is actively investigating you for embezzlement. His attorneys withdrew from the case, probably realizing their client had lied to them about everything. My legal bill still topped $140K by the time it was over. So I'd spent almost a tenth of what I'd gotten from the sale just defending myself against my brother's retaliatory lawsuit. But at least I wasn't going to lose everything. The family reaction was complicated. Emma called me after the FBI raid. I don't know what to think anymore. Daniel swore to me you were lying. He looked me in the eye and said the consulting agreement was legitimate. He's been lying to everyone for years, Em. To me, to Dad, to you. Probably to his own wife. I feel so stupid. I took his side against you. He's good at making people believe him. That's always been his talent. Are you happy now? Now that you've proven you were right? I'm not happy. I'm just done. I'm done fighting, done defending myself, done trying to make people understand. Daniel committed crimes, and he's going to face consequences. That's not about me anymore. Uncle Richard never apologized, but he stopped calling me a liar. Several cousins who'd blocked me on social media quietly unblocked me. Nobody reached out directly. Too awkward, I guess. But the tide of family opinion shifted. I went from crazy, vindictive brother to guy who was right all along. It felt hollow, because I hadn't wanted to be right. I'd wanted my brother to be a good person. I'd wanted my dad to keep his promises. I'd wanted the life I was supposed to have. Instead, I had $1.28 million, minus $140K in legal fees, no family business, estranged relationships with most of my relatives, and the knowledge that my brother was probably going to prison. Daniel's attorney eventually worked out a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to wire fraud and tax evasion. The sentencing was 3 weeks ago. He got 18 months in federal prison, 3 years supervised release, and has to pay back $580K in restitution to the IRS and the business creditors he'd defrauded. Sarah filed for divorce while he was waiting for sentencing. I heard through the family grapevine that she'd known about some of the financial irregularities, but not the extent. She's taking the kids and moving back to her hometown in Pennsylvania. Daniel's relationship with his children is apparently strained. They're old enough, 12, 14, and 16, to understand that Daddy did crimes and is going to jail. The private equity firm that bought the company sent me a letter thanking me for bringing the fraud to light. Apparently, Daniel had stolen from them too during the transition period. They offered me a consulting position helping them restructure operations. Good money, but I turned it down. Too many ghosts. I ran into one of our old project managers, a guy named Tom who'd worked for Dad for 20 years, at an industry conference last month. I tried to avoid him, figured he'd blame me for the company's death. But he caught up to me. "Marcus, got a minute?" I braced myself for the lecture. "Sure. I just wanted to say, you were right, about Daniel, about all of it. A bunch of us knew he was shady, but your dad wouldn't hear it. We should have backed you up. It's not your fault. Yeah, it is. We let Daniel push you around because it was easier than standing up to him. And we paid the price when the company got sold and we lost our jobs. Just wanted you to know that some of us get it now." Thanks, Tom. That actually means a lot. What Daniel did to you was wrong. What you did back was harsh, but I get it. Man can only take so much. That conversation stuck with me. Because Tom was right. What I did was harsh. I chose the nuclear option. I could have just left the company, started over somewhere else, let Daniel have his victory. I chose to burn it all down instead. My therapist has been really pushing me on this lately. Marcus, you achieved your goal. You proved Daniel was wrong and you were right. You exposed his crimes. He's going to prison. But you don't seem satisfied. Why not? Because none of this brings back what I lost. The relationship with my dad. The years I spent believing I was crazy or jealous or not good enough. The company that was supposed to be mine. Proving I was right doesn't give me those things back. So what was the point? I thought about that for a long time. Making sure Daniel didn't get to keep them either. She nodded slowly. That's honest, at least. But Marcus, can I ask you something? If you could go back to the moment you found that first evidence of embezzlement, would you do it differently? I opened my mouth to say yes, that I'd handle it some other way. But I couldn't lie to her. No, I'd do it exactly the same. Because the alternative was spending the rest of my life watching Daniel profit from everything he stole. I'd rather have nothing than watch him have everything. Even if having nothing means losing your family, your reputation, and half your money. Even then, she wrote something in her notes. Probably that I'm a vindictive asshole with unresolved anger issues. She'd Be right. The thing is, I've started to wonder if Daniel and I aren't that different. He was willing to steal, lie, and destroy me to keep his position. I was willing to burn down a 60-year legacy, bankrupt myself in legal fees, and send my brother to prison to get revenge. We both prioritized winning over everything else. Maybe that's what Dad saw in Daniel that he didn't see in me. Not that Daniel was more capable or more deserving, but that Daniel was more ruthless. Dad built that company from nothing in a brutal industry. Maybe he recognized that same survival-at-any-cost mentality in Daniel and thought that's what it took to keep the company alive. If that's true, then maybe I proved Dad wrong. Because I can be just as ruthless as Daniel. I just use my ruthlessness to destroy instead of build. Last week, I got a letter from Daniel. It was forwarded through his attorney. Part of his supervised release conditions is that he can't contact me directly. The letter was short. Marcus, I hope you're happy. You got what you wanted. I'm going to prison. The company is gone and our family is destroyed. You proved that I stole, that I lied, that I manipulated Dad against you. You were right about everything. But you need to know something. I never hated you. I was jealous of you. You were Dad's favorite when we were kids. You were the one everyone loved. I had to work twice as hard to get half the recognition you got just for existing. Taking control of the company wasn't about hurting you. It was about finally being the one Dad was proud of. I went about it wrong. I know that now. I stole. I lied. I pushed you out of something that was rightfully yours. I deserved the consequences. But don't pretend this was just about justice. You wanted to hurt me as much as I hurt you. We're both vindictive assholes who destroyed everything rather than find a way to coexist. I'll be in prison for 18 months thinking about what I did. What will you be thinking about? Daniel? I read that letter 10 times. Then I burned it. Because Daniel's wrong. We're not the same. He destroyed me slowly, methodically, over 15 years, while smiling to my face and making everyone think I was the problem. I destroyed him quickly and honestly, making sure everyone knew exactly what he was. That has to count for something, right? The sentencing was 2 weeks ago. Daniel starts his 18-month sentence next month. Emma's going to the prison near wherever they send him to visit occasionally, but I won't be. The restraining order is still in effect anyway. I've been working on building a new consulting business, actually getting decent clients. Turns out some people respect someone who'll stand up to corruption, even when it costs them. Others think I'm toxic and won't touch me. It's about 50-50. My bank account has $1.14 million left after legal fees and living expenses. It's a lot of money. It's also a fraction of what I would have had if I just walked away from the company and let Daniel keep it. But every time I think about that alternate timeline, me as the permanent VP of operations, watching Daniel run the company Dad promised to both of us, eating shit with a smile for the next 30 years. I feel sick. I'd rather have $1.14 million and my dignity than $1.8 million and none. At least that's what I tell myself at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. It's been 4 months since Daniel went to federal prison. 4 months since I became the guy who sent his own brother to jail. 4 months of living with the consequences of every choice I made. And honestly, I still don't know if I did the right thing. Let me tell you what happened after Daniel started his sentence, because that's when things got really complicated. That's when I started to understand the full weight of what I'd done. Not just to Daniel, but to everyone around us. Daniel's oldest kid, my nephew Ryan, he's 16 now, showed up at my apartment 3 weeks after Daniel went in. I almost didn't recognize him. Hadn't seen him in over a year, and he'd grown. He looked so much like Daniel at that age, it physically hurt. "Uncle Marcus, can we talk?" I let him in, made him sit down, offered him water. My hands were shaking. This was the first member of Daniel's immediate family I'd seen since everything went down. "How did you find my address?" "Aunt Emma gave it to me. She said I should hear your side of things before I make up my mind about you." "Make up your mind about what?" He looked at me with these tired, old eyes. "About whether you're the hero or the villain. Everyone keeps telling me different things. Mom says you destroyed our family because you were jealous. Aunt Emma says you were standing up for yourself. Grandpa Richard says it's complicated. I need to hear it from you." So I told him. Everything. The 15 years of being pushed aside, the embezzlement I discovered, the choice I made to force the sale, the evidence that came out later about the full extent of Daniel's fraud. I didn't sugarcoat anything, but I tried to be fair. When I finished, Ryan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Dad told me he made mistakes, that he did things wrong. But he also said you had choices too, that you could have handled it differently." He's right. I had choices. "So why didn't you? Why did you have to destroy everything? The company, our family, Dad's freedom? There had to be another way." And there it was. The question I'd been avoiding for months. I looked at this kid. This good kid who was suffering because of choices his father and I both made. And I tried to answer honestly. "Ryan, I was angry. For so long. And when I finally had the power to make your dad hurt the way he'd hurt me, I took it. I told myself it was about justice, but honestly, a lot of it was about revenge. And revenge doesn't care about collateral damage." His eyes welled up. "I had to change schools. Did you know that? Because everyone knew my dad went to prison for stealing. Kids were calling me son of a con and making jokes about whether I inherited his criminal genes. Mom couldn't afford our house anymore. So we moved in with my grandparents in Pennsylvania. I had to leave all my friends, my girlfriend, my whole life. Because of what Dad did and what you did to him. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Ryan, I'm sorry. I never wanted..." "You never wanted what? To hurt innocent people? But you did. My little sister cries every night because she misses Dad. My brother won't talk to anyone. He just sits in his room playing video games. And Mom had a breakdown last month. She's on medication now. We're all in therapy. Your dad's crimes. Yeah, Dad broke the law. Dad stole money. Dad's a criminal. I get it. But you had a choice about how to handle it. You could have just left the company. You could have reported the fraud without forcing a sale. You could have not given evidence to the FBI that you knew would send him to prison. You made choices too, Uncle Marcus. And those choices destroyed my family." He stood up to leave. I tried to find words, any words, to make it better. "Ryan, for what it's worth, I really am sorry you and your siblings are suffering. You don't deserve any of this." He looked back at me from the doorway. "You know what the worst part is? I think you and Dad are exactly the same. You both care more about winning than about the people you hurt along the way. The only difference is Dad stole money, and you stole our future." Then he left. I sat in my apartment for 3 hours after that, staring at the wall. Ryan was right. I'd been so focused on making Daniel pay that I never really thought about his kids, or his wife, or the employees who lost their jobs, or the family relationships that were permanently damaged. I told myself it was all Daniel's fault. He committed the crimes. He caused this. But I pulled the trigger. I made the choice to go nuclear instead of surgical. I could have exposed Daniel's embezzlement without destroying the company. I could have negotiated a buyout. I could have walked away. But I didn't want to walk away. I wanted Daniel to suffer, and he is suffering. But so is everyone around him. That night, I did something I hadn't done since Dad died. I got drunk, really drunk. The kind of drunk where you start texting people you shouldn't text and saying things you shouldn't say. I texted Emma, "Did I do the right thing? Please be honest." She responded an hour later, "I don't know anymore. You were right about Daniel. But the way you handled it destroyed more than just him. So were you right?" "Yes. Did you do the right thing? I honestly don't know." I texted my friend Marcus, the other Marcus, "Am I a bad person?" He called me instead of texting back. "Man, you sound messed up. Where are you?" "Home. Ryan came to see me. Daniel's kid." "Oh shit. What did he say?" I told him about the conversation, about Ryan having to change schools, about his mom's breakdown, about his little sister crying every night. Marcus was quiet for a while. "That's heavy. But Marcus, you didn't make Daniel steal. You didn't make him lie to your dad. You didn't make him cut you out of the business. He did that. But I made the choice to destroy him. After he spent 15 years destroying you. Look, I'm not saying you're a saint, but you're not the villain here either. Daniel is facing consequences for his own actions. His kids are facing consequences for his actions. His wife is facing consequences. People who had nothing to do with what he did to me. Yeah, that's the thing about consequences. They spread. But that doesn't mean you're wrong for enforcing them. Doesn't it, though? If the punishment hurts innocent people more than it hurts the guilty person, what's the point? He didn't have an answer for that. The next few weeks were dark. I started questioning everything, every choice I'd made, every step I'd taken down this path of mutually assured destruction. I reached out to some of the former Thompson & Sons employees who'd been laid off when the company sold. Guys I'd worked with for years. Most didn't respond. A few did. Mike Henderson, who'd been a foreman for 12 years, agreed to meet me for coffee. He was in his 50s, had worked his way up from laborer, was 3 years from retirement when the company sold. "Mike, I want to apologize. I know losing your job hurt you." He held up a hand. "Stop. I'm not going to sit here and let you apologize for your brother's crimes. Daniel stole from the company. You exposed it. The company couldn't survive the scandal. That's not your fault. But if you'd handled it differently, Daniel would still be stealing and the company would have collapsed eventually anyway. Maybe it would have been worse. Maybe he would have run it into the ground and we'd have all lost our pensions too. You don't know. So, you don't blame me?" He took a sip of his coffee. "I didn't say that. I blame Daniel for being a thief. I blame your dad for being blind to it. And yeah, I blame you a little for choosing the most destructive option available. But mostly I just blame the situation. Sometimes there are no good choices, just different types of bad. It's not very comforting. It's not supposed to be. You made hard choices and people got hurt. That's going to haunt you. But sitting here drowning in guilt doesn't help anyone. The company's gone. Daniel's in prison. The rest of us are rebuilding. You should too." I took his advice and tried to focus on rebuilding. My consulting business was actually doing okay. I'd landed a contract with a mid-sized firm in Cincinnati, was helping them restructure their operations. The work was satisfying, the money was good, and nobody there knew or cared about my family drama. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Then, 2 months ago, something happened that changed my perspective again. I got a call from Patricia, my attorney. "Marcus, you need to see something. Can you come to my office?" When I got there, she had a folder on her desk. "This came in the mail yesterday. It's from Jennifer Bradshaw." Jennifer, the whistleblower who'd given me the evidence about Daniel's extended fraud. I hadn't heard from her since she testified for the FBI. Patricia handed me a letter. It was handwritten, several pages long. I'll summarize the key parts. Jennifer had found even more evidence of Daniel's fraud. Stuff that went back to before she started working there. She'd been going through old files from a storage unit, documents that were supposed to be destroyed but never were. Daniel hadn't just been stealing for the 5 or 6 years we knew about. He'd been stealing for over a decade. Since 2011, maybe earlier. Small amounts at first, then escalating. The total was somewhere north of $850K, almost $1 million stolen from the family company over more than 10 years. But here's the kicker. Dad knew, not everything, not the full extent. But Dad had discovered some irregularities in 2016, around the same time I was trying to tell him something was wrong. He'd confronted Daniel about it. Daniel had admitted to borrowing about $60K for personal emergency expenses and promised to pay it back. Dad had let it go, told Daniel to fix it quietly and never speak of it again. He covered for Daniel, protected him, chose him over the truth. Jennifer had found emails between Dad and Daniel from 2016 to 2020. Dad checking in every few months. "Have you paid back what you took?" Daniel always promising he would, always having an excuse for why he hadn't yet. Dad getting frustrated, but never following through with consequences. In one email from 2018, Dad wrote, "Daniel, I'm disappointed in you. But you're my son, and you're running this company well despite your mistakes. I can't throw you out without destroying everything I've built. Just pay it back and we'll never discuss this again." Daniel never paid it back, and Dad never told me. I sat in Patricia's office, reading these emails, feeling like the ground was shifting under my feet. "Your father knew," Patricia said softly. "Not about the full extent of the fraud, but he knew Daniel was stealing, and he chose to protect him anyway. Why wouldn't he tell me? Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he thought he was protecting the company. Maybe he thought Daniel would actually fix it. Or maybe..." She hesitated. "Maybe what?" "Maybe he knew that if he told you, you'd demand real consequences. And he wasn't willing to lose Daniel, even if it meant being unfair to you." That hit like a truck. Dad knew Daniel was stealing. Dad knew Daniel was lying. And Dad chose to give Daniel control of the company anyway. Chose to give Daniel 60% ownership anyway. Chose to protect Daniel over being fair to me. Everything I'd believed about the situation shifted. I'd thought Dad was just blind, just fooled by Daniel's charm. But no. Dad saw the truth and chose to ignore it. Chose to sacrifice my future to protect Daniel's. I went home that night and got drunk again. But this time it was different. I wasn't drowning in guilt anymore. I was drowning in anger. All this time, I'd been questioning myself, wondering if I'd been too harsh, too vindictive, too destructive. Feeling guilty about Daniel's kids suffering, about the company being destroyed, about choosing revenge over mercy. But Dad had known. Dad had known Daniel was a thief and given him the company anyway. Had known Daniel was lying to me and supported those lies. Had known I was being cheated and let it happen. My father had betrayed me just as much as my brother had. And I'd spent the last 3 years thinking maybe I'd dishonored his legacy by destroying the company, feeling guilty about it, questioning whether I'd done the right thing. Fuck that. I called Emma. It was late, but I didn't care. Did you know? Marcus? Know what? It's almost midnight. Did you know that Dad knew Daniel was stealing? That he covered for him? Silence. Then quietly. How did you find out? So, you did know. I found out after Dad died. There was a letter in his safe deposit box, an explanation of his will decisions. He said he knew Daniel had made mistakes, but he believed Daniel could lead the company through them. He said you were too rigid, too black and white, that you'd tear the company apart over principle rather than find a way forward. I laughed. It came out bitter and harsh. So Dad knew I'd actually hold Daniel accountable, and he saw that as a flaw. Marcus, Dad was trying to do what he thought was best for the company. Fuck the company. What about what was best for me? What about the 15 years I gave to that place? What about the promises he made me? He chose a thief over his honest son because the thief was willing to let things slide. Dad made mistakes. But he loved you. He loved Daniel more. Enough to betray me. Enough to let me think I was crazy and jealous when I was actually right all along. Emma was crying now. I didn't tell you because I knew it would hurt you. I knew it would make everything worse. Worse than what? Worse than thinking maybe I was the bad guy for destroying the family legacy? Worse than feeling guilty about Daniel's kids suffering? Worse than questioning every choice I made? Marcus, please, no. You don't get to please me. You knew Dad betrayed me, and you kept quiet about it. You're just like them. I hung up on her, blocked her number. I was done. The next morning, sober and exhausted, I realized something. I wasn't the villain in this story. I wasn't even the hero. I was just a guy who got screwed by his family and screwed them back harder. Dad, Daniel, Emma, they'd all chosen protecting the comfortable lie over uncomfortable truth. They'd all chosen preserving their version of family over actual fairness and honesty. And when I'd refused to go along with it, when I'd demanded justice even if it cost everyone something, they'd made me the bad guy. But I wasn't the bad guy for refusing to be stolen from. I wasn't the bad guy for exposing fraud. I wasn't the bad guy for holding people accountable for their choices. Yeah, Daniel's kids are suffering. That's terrible. But they're not suffering because I exposed the truth. They're suffering because their father committed crimes. If Daniel had been embezzling from any other company, the same consequences would have happened. The only difference is that I had the power to trigger those consequences, and I used it. Yeah, the family legacy is destroyed. But that legacy was built on lies. Dad knew Daniel was stealing and covered for it. The Thompson & Sons brand was already corrupted. I just made sure everyone else knew it too. Yeah, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and lost business opportunities. But I would have lost a lot more by staying. I would have lost myself. I would have spent the next 30 years swallowing the humiliation of being the brother who got screwed and accepted it. I didn't choose the easy path. I didn't choose the peaceful path. But I chose the honest path. And if that makes me an asshole, fine. I'm an asshole who can look himself in the mirror. Last week I ran into Sarah, Daniel's ex-wife, at a grocery store. It was awkward as hell. She saw me, I saw her. We both froze. Then she walked over. Marcus? Sarah, How are you? I'm managing. The kids are adapting. It's hard, but we're getting through it. I'm glad. I know this has been. I need to tell you something. She looked around, like she was making sure no one was listening. I found Daniel's journals from years ago. He wrote about you a lot. Oh. He was obsessed with you. Not in a hatred way, exactly. More like he was terrified of you. He wrote about how you were naturally good at things he had to work hard at. How employees liked you more. How Dad used to talk about you being the golden boy when you were kids. He was convinced that if Dad ever saw you as a real leader, you'd take everything from him. That's insane. I just wanted to be treated fairly. I know. But Daniel's brain didn't work that way. To him, fairness meant losing. So he made sure to win first. And once he started stealing, he wrote that he couldn't stop because if the truth came out, you'd have been right about him all along. Every dollar he stole was him proving he could get away with it, that he was smarter than you. Why are you telling me this? She looked sad. Because I spent the last year hating you for destroying my family. But reading those journals, Marcus, you didn't destroy us. Daniel did. He destroyed himself by trying to beat you at a competition. You didn't even know you were in. And he dragged all of us down with him. That doesn't make what I did okay. No, it doesn't. You made choices that hurt my kids. You chose revenge when you could have chosen mercy. But Daniel made choices too. Worse choices. Over a longer time. And I'm tired of pretending you're the only villain in this story. She left after that. Didn't ask for anything. Didn't want to reconnect. Just wanted me to know that she didn't blame me anymore. Or at least she didn't blame me exclusively. I've been thinking a lot about what she said. About Daniel being trapped in a competition with me that I never wanted. About him seeing my existence as a threat that had to be neutralized. It doesn't change anything. Daniel still made his choices. I still made mine. But it does make me wonder. What if we just talked? Really talked, honestly. Without Dad in the middle poisoning the well. What if I'd gone to Daniel in 2014 and said, I feel like you're pushing me out and I don't understand why. What if he'd been honest about feeling threatened instead of pretending everything was fine while sabotaging me? What if Dad had been honest about knowing Daniel stole instead of protecting him? What if any of us had chosen truth and communication over power games and cover-ups? But we didn't. And now we're all living with the consequences. Daniel's still in prison. He's got about 10 months left on his sentence. I've heard he's been a model prisoner, taking classes, staying out of trouble. Apparently, he's planning to get into nonprofit work when he gets out. Figures his construction background might be useful for Habitat for Humanity or something. Trying to do some good to balance out the harm. Part of me respects that. Part of me thinks it's too little too late. Part of me doesn't care what he does as long as he stays out of my life. Emma and I started texting again last month. Not often, and not about anything important. Just small stuff. She sent me a meme about construction work. I sent her one back about teaching. She's a high school teacher. It's not much, but it's something. Uncle Richard died 3 weeks ago. Heart attack like Dad. He was only 71. The funeral was tense. First time I'd been in the same room as most of my extended family since everything went down. Daniel got a compassionate release to attend. He was there in his prison khakis, handcuffed, with 2 guards. We didn't speak. Didn't even make eye contact. It was like we'd become strangers who just happened to share DNA and a last name. Some family members greeted me normally. Others were cold. A couple of cousins actually thanked me quietly for exposing the truth. Said they'd always known something was off about Daniel. Mostly people just seemed tired. Tired of the drama, tired of taking sides, tired of the whole mess. Ryan was there with his siblings. He saw me and nodded. Didn't come over to talk, but didn't run away either. Just acknowledged my existence and moved on. I guess that's progress. After the funeral, my Aunt Linda, Richard's wife, pulled me aside. Your uncle always said you and Daniel were the same. Yeah? How so? He said you both inherited your grandfather's stubbornness and your father's pride. Said it made you strong in some ways and stupid in others. Said the tragedy was that you could have built an empire together if you'd figured out how to work as a team instead of competing. Daniel didn't want a team. He wanted to be in charge. And you didn't want to compromise. You wanted justice. You were both right and both wrong, and neither of you could see past your own pain long enough to find a middle ground. There was no middle ground. He stole from me for 15 years. She patted my arm. I know, honey. And you destroyed everything to make sure he couldn't keep it. You both got exactly what you wanted, to hurt each other. Hope it was worth it. Then she walked away. Was it worth it? I've got money in the bank. I've got a successful consulting business. I've got my integrity. I refuse to be stolen from. Refuse to accept injustice. Refuse to let crimes go unpunished. But I don't have a family anymore. Not really. I've got a sister who texts me memes occasionally, and a bunch of relatives who tolerate me at funerals. I've got a nephew who thinks I'm as bad as his father. I've got a legacy as that guy who destroyed his family business in a spite war. Daniel's in prison, disgraced, divorced, probably going to be estranged from his kids for years, if not forever. His life is genuinely ruined. His career, his reputation, his family, all gone. Did I do that to him? Or did he do it to himself and I just accelerated the timeline? I honestly don't know anymore. My therapist asked me last week, if you could go back and make different choices, knowing everything you know now about how it would turn out, what would you do? I thought about that for a long time. Thought about Ryan changing schools. Thought about Sarah's breakdown. Thought about Daniel in prison. Thought about the employees who lost jobs. Thought about the family fracturing apart. And then I thought about 15 years of watching Daniel take credit for my work. Thought about Dad looking me in the eye and telling me I wasn't good enough. Thought about the 60-40 split in the will. Thought about everyone acting like I was crazy for being angry about being robbed. I'd do it exactly the same, I told her. Maybe that makes me a bad person. Maybe it makes me vindictive and cruel. But I refuse to regret standing up for myself, even if the cost was high. She nodded. That's honest. But Marcus, you need to understand. Choosing not to regret doesn't mean there's no cost. You're going to carry this forever. The knowledge that you chose destruction over compromise, that your pursuit of justice hurt innocent people, that's yours to carry now. I know. Can you live with that? I'm living with it now. No, you're surviving it. Living with it means accepting what you did, accepting what it cost, and finding a way to build something meaningful despite it. Can you do that? I don't know yet. Some days I think I can. Some days I think I already am. My consulting business helps companies avoid the kind of toxic family dynamics that destroyed Thompson & Sons. I help them implement oversight systems so no one person can embezzle for years. I help them create equitable partnership agreements. Maybe that's my way of turning this disaster into something useful. Other days, I wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about Ryan's face when he told me I'd stolen his future, or Sarah's breakdown, or the fact that Daniel's youngest daughter will spend her teenage years knowing her dad is in prison partly because of choices I made. Those are the nights I wonder if I'm actually a sociopath. If normal people with functioning consciences could do what I did and still sleep at night. But then I remember Dad's emails covering for Daniel. I remember Daniel taking credit for the Riverside Mall project. I remember the 60-40 split. And I think they made me this way. They taught me that family will screw you over and expect you to smile about it. That loyalty is just another word for being a doormat. I learned from the best. Here's what I know for sure. I'm not sorry Daniel went to prison. I'm not sorry the company got sold. I'm not sorry I exposed the truth, even though the truth burned everything down. But I am sorry about the collateral damage. I'm sorry Ryan had to change schools. I'm sorry Daniel's kids don't have their dad. I'm sorry the employees lost their jobs. I'm sorry Emma lost both her brothers in different ways. I'm sorry I had to become the kind of person who could do what I did. I'm sorry that justice and revenge look so similar from certain angles that I'm still not entirely sure which one I was pursuing. Last month, I got a birthday card in the mail. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. Daniel's. Inside, he'd written one sentence. I'm sorry I made you think you had to burn it all down to be seen. I stared at that card for an hour. Then I threw it away. Because it's too late for apologies. It's too late for understanding. We're past the point where sorry means anything. We destroyed each other. We destroyed our family. We destroyed everything our grandfather built. And we did it because neither of us could find a way to coexist without someone winning and someone losing. If I'm the asshole, then so is Daniel. If Daniel's the villain, then so am I. We're two sides of the same bitter coin, spinning through the air. And where we landed was a place where everybody lost. The company's gone. Dad's gone. The family's fractured. Daniel's in prison. I'm estranged from most of my relatives. The legacy is dust. Was I the asshole for forcing the sale? For exposing the fraud? For making sure Daniel paid the maximum price for what he did? I don't know. I really don't. But I know this. If I had to do it all over again, knowing every consequence, every bit of pain it would cause to everyone involved, I'd still do it. Because the alternative, spending my life as Daniel's doormat, swallowing injustice with a smile, pretending everything was fine while being systematically robbed, would have killed something essential in me. Better to destroy everything honestly than preserve everything through lies. At least, that's what I tell myself. So here's my question to you. If someone steals from you, lies to you, manipulates everyone against you for 15 years, and faces no consequences because exposing them would hurt innocent people and destroy a legacy, what do? Do you walk away and let them win because the moral high road is more important than justice? Or do you burn it all down because some things matter more than keeping the peace? I chose fire. And I'm still standing in the ashes, trying to figure out if that makes me strong or just cruel. That's my story. That's my confession. That's my moral dilemma laid bare. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, whether you think I'm right or wrong, please hit that like button and subscribe to Who's the Villain? AITA. And here's what I really want to know. In the comments, give me a rating from 0 to 10. 0 being, you're completely justified, and 10 being, you're an absolute monster. And tell me why. Tell me where you think the line is between justice and revenge. Tell me if you think I'm the villain, or Daniel is, or if we both are. Because honestly, I still don't know. and maybe your perspective will help me figure it out. Or maybe it won't matter. Maybe I'll carry this uncertainty for the rest of my life. Never quite sure if I did the right thing or just the thing that felt right in the moment. Either way, the deed is done. The ashes are settling, and I'm left wondering if the person I became in pursuit of justice is someone I even want to be. Leave your rating and your judgment in the comments. I'll be reading every single one, looking for an answer I'm not sure exists. Thanks for watching, or reading, or whatever this is. And good luck never becoming me.